I think we're recording. It's been a year and a half since I posted anything on my channel. I've been kind of hibernating. I haven't been ignoring the political situation. I've been glued to it for far too much every day. And just felt I hadn't anything to add to the whole conversation that other people weren't amply covering. But I want to continue with this YouTube channel, maybe as partly a record of who I am and maybe trying to figure out what I'm about, and just as maybe a vanity project. But most of all, what I notice is that people who start YouTube channels and stay with it gain in proficiency, they gain in professionalism, they gain their voice and become less inhibited, more natural, more authentic, of more themselves. I want that for myself. So I'm going to challenge myself to make a video every day. Yeah, because if I don't, I just won't do any at all. It's got to be all or nothing, I think. And yeah, I'm just encouraged to start that. And I don't even know what they're all going to be about. But today, I'm going to show you how I make my walnut shortbread cookies, which have only 2.5 grams of carbs per cookie. I forget how much fat, tons of fat, it's all butter fat, which is great. And the protein from all the nuts. I love walnuts, I love butter, and this has become a staple of my diet. One of these with a big cold glass of kefir that I'm lucky enough to get from directly from a farm that, has its own milk and own dairy, and they make the kefir, and I just absolutely love it. When I drink this glass of kefir, it just feels, I can feel it going all the way into my gullet, and it feels like it's just nourishing everything. And I just, it's become a staple of my diet. So kefir, walnut shortbread, and then the other things that I eat. I basically have sort of one other meal a day, which is, meat or a protein food. Maybe a little bit of fruit with it, sometimes a bit of vegetable. I'm less keen on the vegetables these days. So anyway, I bore you to death with my dietary habits, but we've each got to find what works for us. These people who do straight carnivore, I don't know. I just don't know how they do it. I mean, I've tried it a couple of times. I lasted half a day. It's like, no, that's not going to work for me. And keto, I tried to be really keto, but man, you just have to find what really feels good in your system, and it's doing you the right, it's giving you the right nutrients that you run on, and go with that. So I'm due to make some of my walnut shortbread cookies, and I'm starting right now this afternoon, and I just thought I'd show you how I do it because it's so simple. So here's my bowl, into which I have chopped half a pound of butter. So I'm buying sticks lately, so that's 2 sticks of butter. Now that has to be absolutely room temperature, like super soft. Okay, so I put it in there, I cut it all up so it gets soft, depending, if it's winter time and it's cold in here, I'll put on the oven and then let all the heat go out, and then when it's only barely lukewarm, I'll warm it up. And so I have different ways for softening up the butter, depending on the season and all that. So that's the butter. And then what I do is I get my walnuts. Hang on, I gotta get them. Just a sec. My walnuts. Okay, I use a bag. This is a 300-gram bag of walnuts. Oh yeah. So the whole package goes into these cookies. And hang on, I'll show you what I do. You've got to pre-toast the walnuts just a little bit. So here's what I do. Dump the bag on my cookie sheet. There you go. And And then I break them up with my hands. Break them up with my hands before they go in the oven. So you preheat the oven to 350. And while it's heating up, you just simply snap them and they sort of break into roughly 4 pieces or so. So you do this. And I'm not going to bore you while I do the whole thing. So I'll just go tell you from there. So then put them in the oven and you'll start to smell them. But you've got to watch them. Don't leave them. I've done that and burnt them a few times and that's no fun. Walnuts aren't cheap. Okay, so put them in. And it usually takes about 10 minutes in my oven. Anywhere from 8 to 12 minutes. Just ever so lightly toasted. Take them out of the oven. Dump them on your chopping board. And get your butcher knife. Get your knife and chop them fine. Chop them small. So some of it ends up really fine. Okay, so then... when you're and you can even do that one afternoon and forget about it, put them away. You know, you can break this up into different chores. But when you're ready to assemble, you simply I put in 2 tablespoons only of, you see what I mean? This is low carb. 2 tablespoons of raw organic sugar, fine sugar, into the butter and cream it. That's old fashioned. We used to call it creaming the sugar into the butter. So the butter totally absorbs the sugar. And then I measure out my flour and I use oat flour, very fine oat flour. And it's 2 cups of oat flour, into which I incorporate half a teaspoon of salt. And I use salted butter too. So yeah, I like a saltiness to these cookies. Okay, so the salt and... so the dry is in the bowl and the nuts are in the bowl, and then you've got your butter and sugar and everything. So, but the sugar is dry, but it goes into the butter. Am I making this really complicated? Hopefully not. Okay. Then when I'm ready to assemble everything, I put about 1/3 of the nuts into the soft butter and sugar mixture, and about 1/3 of the flour. Mix it really well with my wooden spoon, and then keep doing that till you've added all of them. And then you really got to muscle it, and then it forms a ball. And then I put the whole thing in the fridge for about 15-20 minutes. It just firms it up enough that it's easier to roll out the balls, the cookies. And then I put them, that makes about, how many? 60? No, not that many. It makes between 3.5 and 4 dozen cookies. And so I use parchment paper on my baking sheet. They're just little balls. Put them on a parchment and bake them. And they take about 25 minutes. You want them, now you got to watch them carefully. They'll get a little cracky on the surface. And you want them to be ever so lightly brown on top, ever so lightly. And if you flip, they're a little bit brown on the bottom. Because if you don't bake them enough, then you don't achieve that wonderful kind of sandy flavor, the sandy texture. It's the texture that's so wonderful. So anyway, once you've got them to that level, take them out and just let them cool. And let them totally cool before you try to handle them, because when they're still warm, even when they're just still warm, they're very fragile and they'll crumble, right? Oh, I also use, because I'm using oat flour, I put about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of xanthum gum into the flour mixture. Yeah, I know you're supposed to, in a cooking recipe, you're supposed to show everything, but I don't know how to do all that. So that's how I make my walnut shortbread cookies. Oh, so let me show you the finished product. I have to keep making a steady supply of them because... Okay, that's what they look like. That's my walnut shortbread. So the balls, I make them about 1.5 inches, and it's like several bites. You don't just shovel the whole thing in at once. You take several bites, and honestly, you'll become addicted like I am. So, if you have any questions about it, if I was unclear about something, just comment. And also tell me, what's your go-to staple food? That's a staple food for me. I know it's bizarre, but to each their own, right? Okay. Oh, by the way, the recipe I've adapted from they're called sometimes Russian tea cakes or Mexican wedding cookies that are then rolled in icing sugar. I was making those for a while, an adaptation, but I skipped the icing sugar. I cut way back on the sugar content. I use oat flour instead of wheat flour. So it's a whole different thing. It's oat and walnut shortbread. Give it a try. Bye for now. You never know what I'm going to talk about next. Hope you'll stay with me. Say hello. Thanks.